Hello, I'm UK Air Gunner, and this is the Colt Single Action Army Peacemaker. Finally got my hands on one of these beautiful revolvers by Umarex, and this one is the US Marshal Limited Edition, which is not actually the one that I originally wanted to get. I had been looking very seriously at the NRA Limited Edition, mainly because that was a pellet shooting version with a rifled barrel, and of course it was in this same barrel length as well. But looking around, it was either ridiculously expensive or the people I was talking to simply didn't have one. So I made a bit of a compromise and went for this one. It's got the 7.5-inch barrel, which I love, much prefer it to the 5.5, and it's got that sort of antique finish to it, and it's got quite a cool US Marshals emblem there as well. And yeah, so when Umarex first came out with these, I really liked the look of them with the 5.5-inch barrel. And of course they had the blued and the antique finish. I didn't really care too much for the nickel finish personally. I was quite intrigued by the blued finish. I really wanted one of those, but actually when I went to the store and had a look at the two side by side, I swung more towards the antique finish. And then when they finally brought out the 7.5-inch barrel version, I was like, right, okay, now's the time to go and get one. Because this is my ideal, really. Well, my ideal would be this, but a pellet shooting version, because this is a 4.5mm .177 caliber steel BB firing version. But I suppose you could say that means it's cheaper to shoot at least, and the amount of accuracy you're going to gain from a pellet shooting version is fairly minimal. I think I'm safe in saying. For these action pistols, they're not target pistols. You're not going to be shooting at 100 yards or anything. Yeah, I think this is a good compromise. And yeah, so but anyway, let's start having a look, because as I say, this is a really nice replica of this classic firearm from the Wild West of the United States, in a time when outlaws and marshals really rule the day. So really cool. Now the real single action army originally came out in this barrel length. I think it's the cavalry model, I think I'm right in saying, and it originally came out in this 7.5-inch barrel in, I think, 1873. Hopefully I'm right in saying that. And then it later came out in the 5.5, which I think is the sort of army, proper, infantry soldier version, and then of course later on it came out of the even shorter ones. I think, is it 3 3/4 or something? Yeah, basically it's the length of the ejection rod housing, and that's considered the civilian model that was sold to public, or was a better, because it could be used for concealed carry. That's what I'm trying to get to. So yeah, pretty cool. So as I said, let's have a look. So you've got the very nice US Marshals emblem on the sort of, I guess, fake wood grip, although there's no visible grain as such. It's kind of got almost a marbly kind of, not texture, but it looks almost a little bit marble kind of like. But yeah, very nice grips. They're not particularly great. They're very smooth plastic, so you don't get a lot of grip off them, especially if you put some oil on your gun and you end up getting some of the grips. Suddenly they're going to be very slippery, and of course the shape of it is not the most comfortable or ergonomic shape in the world to hold, but it does the job, which is what it was designed to do. It was to do the job of just being able to hold the gun, essentially, and be fairly simple to manufacture as well. So kind of cool. Now the action on this is, well, it's a single action army, so I think it's probably single action, which means that you have to fully cock the hammer in order to pull the trigger and fire the gun. Unlike a double action revolver such as my Dan Wesson, where you can pull the trigger and that cocks the hammer, rotates the cylinder and fires the gun, all just through pulling the trigger. Now the advantage of a pure single action is that you have a fairly light, clean, crisp trigger pull each time, and it's very short as well, so it's got quite a good trigger for an air gun, I have to say. And so now the other thing is, if you've ever watched any of the Hickok 45 videos on these single action armies, you'll know that it's a Colt, or at least a very good clone of a Colt, if there are 4 distinct clicks from the hammer as you pull it back to spell out the 4 letters of Colt. Now, people I spoke to before I got this, speaking to people on YouTube, on Instagram, and they're saying, no, it's only got 3 clicks when you pull it back. There's only 3 distinct clicks. So I was slightly confused because I knew this was, you know, a very good, proper replica of these Colts, and of course it's licensed by Colt, so it should be. And sure enough, when I got it, you've got the 1, 2, 3, and that's it. But you can get the 4 clicks. Now, part of the problem is, you can see the hammer doesn't go all the way forwards. It sits there, and there's a massive gap. With the real things, when the hammer's down, it sits flush, you know, all the way forwards. Now you've got because this is an air gun, you've got a CO2 valve in here, which pushes against the hammer. It puts a bit of pressure and pushes it back to the, in effect, second click. So what you can do is you can hold down the trigger, and you can push the hammer ever so slightly forwards, and not enough to engage the CO2 valve, but to get it past that click. So now you have, hopefully you can hear it, 1, spell C-O-L-T. So this is officially a Colt. So yeah, but just a little something that I was intrigued by. So you can get the 4 clicks, but really this is a 3-click action. So, but that's just such an iconic sound, isn't it? Just that, such a satisfying sound. Those 3 or 4 clicks, really cool. And so moving forward, as I say, got some Colt licensing, so we've got the sort of patent and that sort of thing. 1871, the patent was apparently filed. You've got the Colt Single Action Army 45 caliber writing there, and on the other side you've got the classic Colt logo. The caliber, this one is in the F, which I think is for the German market or something. And then because this is a limited edition, you've got 618 out of 1200. So because this is a limited edition US Marshals version, you've got that. And yeah, so the barrel is a 7.5 inch, which to me just looks better, and you're going to get better performance because the BB, you know, as it goes down there, it's gonna settle down into its trajectory a little bit better. And you've got a longer sight radius as well, so you're going to be able to look down the sights more accurately. And yeah, it's got more time. The BB's got more time to accelerate and all the usual sort of stuff with the perks of having a longer barrel. The sights, you can't really look down when the hammer's forwards as it is, so you've got to fully cock the hammer. I'll keep my finger off the trigger. And then hopefully you'll be able to see down the sights. So actually the sight picture isn't that bad. It's very simple, obviously. You've just got a sort of groove cut in to the bridge over the cylinder, and just a standard front post sight. But the sights are kind of exactly how I'd like them. They're not too big where you've got loads of room for error, and they're not too small where you can hardly see them. They're just right for me. So actually you can shoot this fairly accurately. Let's put the hammer down. And just as a little kind of reference, this was my first 2 cylinders worth. I do 5 shots per cylinder. I'll explain that in a minute. But this was my first 2 cylinders at 20 feet roughly. And you can see I've got a fairly decent grouping here. Obviously left and right is slightly better. Probably the elevation was probably more me. So if you want to take a reference from this, probably go with the elevation. And that's probably, I don't know, probably about an inch, just under an inch maximum spread. So not that bad, I don't think. And obviously that's my first shoot, so, and that's with no rest or anything. I was just standing up and holding it in front of me. Yeah, I thought that was pretty good, and it's probably on par with my Dan Wesson, which is also a fairly accurate steel BB gun, I think. And you're not going to get much more actually out of it, I don't think. So pretty good as far as I'm concerned, anyway. And sorry, just continuing on. So as I say, that's the sights, just a standard front post, non-adjustable sights. Obviously, they're as non-adjustable as you can possibly get. Very nice recessed barrel. So you've got the 45 sort of Colt fake barrel there with, I think that's, yeah, you can't really see in the video, but there's some fake rifling in there. And then the actual inner barrel, 0.177 4.5mm steel, yeah, brass barrel, get it right in a minute, starts at, or ends about here. So it's recessed quite deep, and obviously you can't really see it in the video because it is quite nicely recessed, but yeah, it's probably goes back to about here-ish. So the barrel isn't quite 7.5 inch, but then again you do get a slightly extra length inside the shells, which she'll show you now. So unloading and loading, it's well, it's fairly simple. In effect, what you want to do is bring a hammer to half cock, like so, or the first click, or the second click if you're going all the way forwards. Anyway, open up the loading gate, and then you can see the back of your shell. And then to get it out, you can either do the sort of how you're meant to do it, as it were. So I like to hold it in my left hand like so, and then using my right hand, you pull back on this tab, which is the ejector rod. So you just literally push that. Oops, there we go. And then it pushes out the shell. Now you can get into quite a good swing with this. Oops. Once your hand doesn't fill up too quickly, like that. So that's how you're meant to do it. Now, of course, I can show you quickly with one of these. Because these shells don't expand after you shot them like the real things, you can just tip them out. Sorry, just tip them out, because they're quite loose fitting, but not, well, they're loose fitting enough. Yeah, and then you can see, hopefully, no, you can't see because the light's atrocious in here, but you've got 6 nicely bored out holes in that cylinder. They're not 45 caliber. These are the same sort of diameter as the ones that go in all of the other shell loading revolvers, which is roughly 357 territory, or 38. So the holes aren't really big enough, but the cylinder is about the right sort of size, so, you know, and they can only do so much without making it too expensive or anything. So, and then to reload, now this is where my 5 shots per cylinder comes into practice, because it's called the John Wayne load. I get a lot of my stuff from Hickok 45, by the way. So what you do is you load one, like so, and then you skip one, and then you load 4 more. And the reason for doing this, at least with the real thing, is so that when you finish loading, close up the loading gate, and when you pull back the hammer and let it down, with the real thing, this would mean that the hammer, or the pin on the hammer, the firing pin on the hammer, isn't resting against the back of a primer on the back of the case, which could be potentially very hazardous, because a little knock on the back of the hammer could set that round off, and then you're in big trouble. That's the reason they do it. Now, of course, with this one, because the hammer kind of locks at that first click, it's not such a big deal. And also, of course, we don't have to worry about primers and everything, because we've got in CO2. So it's slightly different. But the reason I quite like to do it is, if you're a bit forgetful, like I am, as you're sort of going through, going bang, 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 and you suddenly think, oh, hang on a second, how many shots have I done? Well, hopefully you can see there's the rims of the two shells on this side. But on this side, you can see there's a rim there, but there isn't one there. So you know that you've got one shot left, because that's the gap you started with. So I've got one shot left, and I go bang, and now I know I'm out. That's the reason I like to do it. Whereas, of course, you've got 6 shells in there, it looks the same all the way around. And plus, it's kind of a realistic load for this kind of replica of a firearm, because that's how you should shoot the real firearm. So that's part of the reason I like to do it. So once again, bring it to half cock. I'm then going to rotate the cylinder to put the 6th round in, just so I don't lose it. And then obviously when you finish loading your last shell, leave the shell and the cylinder where it is, close up the loading gate, and then pull back the hammer all the way. So you're just continuing that cycle of the cylinder, and then let it down. That's just, apparently it's better for the action if you always fully cock the hammer and you don't go forwards from half cock, which apparently you just don't want to do. It's bad for the springs and the internal mechanism, because well, this is the real Colt mechanism, so which is a little fragile compared to modern day ones. Anyway, before I forget, I nearly forgot, the CO2 in this, you've got a little cutout here, which is perfect for getting your thumb nail in. And you lift up, there you go, and then you've got your CO2 and your built-in Allen key, which is probably quite good design. Well, it is good design because it means your Allen key is always with you to tighten up like that. For me, it's a little bit of a pain because I kind of want to replace these grips, but finding and then customizing grips to fit onto this air gun is going to be much more tricky because you've got all this stuff on the inside of the grip. So I don't know, it's clever design, but for me, someone who wants to replace the grips, is a little bit of a pain. So yeah. But otherwise it's very good. The safety, which I never use, the real thing didn't have a safety, so as long as you're safe with it, you don't keep it loaded and cocked when you're not shooting, then you don't really need to use the safety. To be honest, I don't even want to use it, because every time I try and engage it, it's ridiculously stiff, to the point where I'm worried if I do engage it, I'll never be able to unengage it, or disengage it, I should say. But at least Umarex has sort of hidden it away in front of the trigger guard there on the underside of the gun. They haven't got some ridiculously massive button on the side there or anything like that. So that's quite a good bit there that they've done, because they have to include a safety. That's part of the regulations, I believe. So right, before we finish, move that up there, bring in the box quickly, show where it comes in. So obviously this is US Marshall Edition, so box is probably slightly different because it's got that on. But yeah, quite a nice box, nice wood effect on it, because I think the real things came in a wooden box. Got some mildly interesting statistics on the back side. See, it says velocity up to 140 meters per second, so that's probably on the right side of 400 FPS, I reckon. And the rest of it's fairly, yeah, barrel length 190 millimeters, so quite a decent barrel length. Weight is, well, call it a kilogram, 997 grams, so it's got a good weight to it. I don't know what the real thing weighed, but I imagine it's fairly close. Just a really nice pistol. Then the inside, you've just got a cutout and a manual, and that's it. Quite a thick manual. It's in 8 different languages, so that's always handy. But it's got, you know, the usual: how to look at the sights properly, how to engage safety, how to load the CO2 in the shells. What's that? Oh, that's cleaning. Okay. So yeah, what you'd expect. Now there you go. So that's the 7.5 compared to the 5.5 inch barrel. Now I don't know about you guys, but to me that one just looks cooler. But I don't know. Anyway, stick that back in there. Okay. So so as I said, I did want to get the pellet version, the NRA limited edition, but it's either ridiculously expensive or the places I went to simply didn't have it. Now I want to give a brief shout out to the Sportsman Gun Centre in Exeter. That's in the UK, by the way. And it's down in the southwest of the country, if you don't know. And fantastic place, really cool. They mainly deal in real firearms, you know, rifles, shotguns, but they also have a very large selection of air rifles and a medium-sized selection of air pistols of all sorts. And that's where I got this one at a very good price, and yeah, very helpful, friendly staff, so shout out to them. Thank you very much. And yeah, I think that about concludes my review on this air pistol. I'll just say briefly, shooting wise, it's very nice to shoot, and as I say, every time you pull back that hammer, it's a really satisfying sound. It does shoot a little high, but apart from that, left and right, as you saw, seems to be dead on. Yeah, I mean, once you start shooting at range, obviously everything sort of levels out elevation wise because it shoots a little high. So yeah, very, very cool. So thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. And also don't forget to check me out on Instagram. Username is of course UK_airgunner. So once again, thank you very much for watching. UK Air Gunner out.